G'day viewers, my name's Graham Stevenson and I'd like to invite you to come on a journey of creativity and learning and adventure through the series Colour in Your Life. There's an artist in every family throughout the world, and lots of times there's an artist deep down inside all of us as well. So grab your kids, your brothers, your sisters, your aunties, uncles and mums and dads and come and see how some of the best artists do what they do.
Okay folks, well we are back in New Zealand again. Fantastic, love this country, love the people. And we're at an area called the Manukau Peninsula. I got that right?
Yes, you did.
Absolutely, it's fantastic. And we're with a very talented gentleman today, Mr. Paul Coney. Paul,
how do you do?
Welcome to the show. Wonderful to be here. Now Paul's work, really exceptional. I mean, you look at Paul's work, you can see that he has spent literally hundreds of hours involved in what he does. Your work initiated really through dealing with depression when you were a kid, and it was at the loss of your mum that this all came about, and your absolute fascination with nature.
Yeah, my mother died when I was about 15. It's quite a protracted illness, and I found it quite traumatising. I suppose you could say I didn't deal with it. I coped with it, but I didn't deal with it. So basically what I did is I suppressed everything, every emotion I had about it, and I just carried on and put one foot in front of the other, basically. When you do that, I think we all know now that it takes its toll and these emotions don't go away, and you end up getting very depressed or end up with an anxiety disorder, which is exactly what's happened.
But you did use, you used your work to sort of a little bit like a phoenix. You rose out of that, yeah.
I did watercolours for probably over 20 years. I was absolutely fascinated with watercolours and the techniques. You have to preconceive watercolours, the planning of them, strategies, etc., etc. But after 20 years, I guess I started to feel a little bit stale with the medium, and I wanted a change, and I wanted to do larger works, basically. With watercolour, you're always a bit limited with the size of the paper, the framing, the glazing of the work. It starts to get quite heavy for walls. Whereas canvases like this, they're light and they fit a modern interior, really.
Well, what we're going to be doing today is that Paul works with photographing his wife and his grandkids. I mean, lives in a beautiful area right down near the beaches. I love your water scenes. There's delightful Chantilly with the young ladies in it going down to the surf. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be doing your beautiful wife and your granddaughter at a beach scene. So I'm going to step out of shot and I'm going to let Paul make a start, and we'll discuss a whole bunch of things as we go through. But really, really talented guy. You're going to be quite amazed.
The first thing I do when I start painting is I try and sort out which colours I'm going to use. I always use a limited palette, as I find this helps with matching the colours. Maybe at a later date if you have to reapply something on top. So the colours I'm going to use today is cobalt blue, and I put the cobalt blue here. I set out my palette the same way pretty much every time. I have blues and cooler colours this side. I have umber here, which I can make a dark out of, and I have warmer colours this side. I usually have two whites as well. One for the cooler colours, one for the warmer colours. So I find if you get a little spot of blue and white and you use yellow, the whole thing turns green. So it's better to separate them. I like to set out and mix all my colours before I start, so I don't need to do that in the middle of a painting. Okay, I'm now going to mix up some paint. So I've got my palette knife and I'll do some darks first. So a bit of the blue, I can see I'm going to use this for the shadows. So I want a kind of a neutral dark that will turn into a grey. It's hard to see what the actual colour of it while it's so dark, but if we get a little bit of white and mix it in, you can see that's turned out to a relatively neutral grey, perhaps a little bit on the blue side, but that's okay. The cardigan's brown on Marita, so I'm going to make a browner version of this as well, and again do a bit of a tonal range of it.
Now you've got an amazing piece that you've done called Albert Park Fountain, and it's a magnificent piece of one of your florals, something that you're very famous for. And also a piece called Cardinal de Richelieu. The one thing that you do find fascinating is water drops and reflections and what water actually does, and you can see in this piece the water actually over the flowers. It's quite amazing.
I do love water as an added element into my paintings. I love all the effects of water, the reflections, the highlights you get with water, the refractions of lights you can get with water into the shadow. I really feel it adds another dimension to any scene. Yeah.
It's amazing, absolutely.
Okay, now I'm going to put the first tonal values on. I'll grab my marl stick, which I always work with, and I think I'll start with the darker tones in Marita's cardigan. So I'm just getting about the right tonal value, and I just start putting the darker tones in like this in the shadow of Marita's cardigan. Now everything on this side of Marita is pretty much in shadow. So I'm putting the darker bits on first, but shadows are quite interesting things because you get reflected light back into them, you get lots of colour changes, and basically I'm just trying to get some folds in first, quickly.
So it looks like a pretty flexible brush you've got there as well.
Yeah, these are just soft brushes, they're just nylon brushes. In actual fact, shadow is usually, well, I find it's quite continuous, so I don't stop where it changes. Like I'm doing shadow on the hair now, but really it's not that different from shadow on the coat. So where it's dark basically. Shadow just falls indiscriminately on everything. It doesn't pick and choose.
That oil's running out quite effectively. What are you using, a medium?
Yeah, I basically use I like Liquin as a product. Liquin, it helps the paint come off the brush quite easily. It's fast drying, and it holds the paint together, I think, so the paint doesn't flake or whatever, but it's nice to use.
I'm just looking at this piece called Champagne on Ice, and there's very, very few dark spots in there, but there's so much shape and texture. There's virtually no dark colours except on two edges.
I wanted that painting to have quite a sort of a potpourri feel, a very petally feel, and the softness of the roses. I wanted to bring out the softness of the rose petals. Now here, quite often in shadows you get reflected light, so I can see a little bit of grey happening in terms of reflected light back onto the cardigan. So again, I'm swapping to a smaller brush, and I'm going to go to a tonal value of grey here and just put it in where I see that reflected light happening.
Now you do a lot of commissions as well.
Yeah, I like doing commissions very much.
Yeah, because you can work with the client. There's one particular piece which I think is a really great piece. It's called Greg's Family, and you've basically got this gentleman and his whole family working on the car outside a shed. They all know who they are, but what a fantastic approach for a different idea for a portrait.
Yeah, well, I feel it encapsulated more than just a portrait. It encapsulated Greg and the character of his family and the character of his life.
Yes.
He's a dairy farmer, and it just showed like the farm sheds. Greg was a very keen mechanic, was proud of his Dodge Charger, which he'd worked on and brought up to scratch. So that was featured in the painting as well. Okay, so what I'll do now is just move the easel up a little bit. And with this easel, it's just a matter of lifting it and changing where the dowels are. It's very easy. A friend of mine made this for me, and I find it much easier than quite a lot of other quite complicated easels which you can buy.
Easier the better. Yeah.
So with the flesh tone, I'll do a bit on the leg here, on Marita's leg. I've mixed up some flesh tones, and how I'll start is I'll put in this bit of the shadow here, which is it's normally called the core shadow, and it's usually a little bit darker than the rest of the shadow because it's not really receiving any reflected light back into it. It's a band that kind of goes down the join of where the shadow meets the light. And I've got a general rule saying which is it's usually darker where the shadow meets the light, which is the core shadow.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So you generally start your paintings directly onto a white canvas?
Yeah, I normally do. Some landscapes it's a good idea to put down a ground colour if that colour appears or that tone appears quite often. But normally I just like starting on white, yeah.
So you've got another piece here called Crème de Crème, and another beautiful floral piece. What was the motivation for when you really started to do the florals?
I do love doing the florals. I like the detail in them, all the different textures. So here we've got the highlight in the middle of the light form there. So I'll just use a little bit of slightly brighter white there and just do that down the middle. And then because it's flesh, of course, things need to be softened a little bit again.
I noticed that you're sort of drying the brush. It's important to get the oil and the paint out when you do that.
Yeah, I wipe my brush quite often, or all that happens is I start spreading excess paint around that I don't really want to. Okay, so now I'm moving on to just slightly deeper shadow of this other leg. Putting the darker bits in first and working my way down, a little bit of core shadow there again as it goes over the ankle and heel. Then of course warming and lightening a little bit as we move over to the middle of the leg here.
Now you've also, over the last 30 years, and you've been painting for 40 years, but you also do classes and workshops for people as well. And you've got your studio and your home set up for people anywhere in the world that can come in and spend time with you here in this beautiful area and learn from you and your very talented wife Marita as well, who's a brilliant artist. So if somebody wanted to come in and have a talk to you about possibly flying out from somewhere across the world, what's your website address again, Paul?
Is paulconey.co.nz.
It's something that you and Marita have been putting together, and obviously having people from all over the world come in and spend time with you while you teach them these techniques. And then I think as well, it's such a beautiful area that you live in.
Yeah, it is. It's very picturesque.
Yeah,
we're close to the beach. It's quite a dramatic landscape, really. Lots of things to paint here. Okay, so I'll move just onto the reflection of this leg as well. With reflections, they can either be absolutely perfect reflections, where you could turn the whole painting upside down and there wouldn't be any difference. Here you've got the shape of the leg being distorted quite a lot. There's all sorts of things that happen with reflections. There's no kind of set rule, I don't think. And I think that should do for the reflections at this point.
That looks fantastic. So what we can do now is we can move on to the other piece that you've prepared. So we'll move on to the next one.
Yep, sure. Now I've got a slightly greyed blue which I'm going to start with a tonal range. And some of the sand has got just soft, almost wrinkles in it, which I'm going to start putting in first. What I'm doing is called negative imaging. You do it in watercolour too, where you paint dark around lighter tonal values. With this oil, because it's a covering medium, I'm actually painting lighter tones around the darker tonal value of the reflections. And I can actually cut right into the reflection if I want to with these lighter tones. Basically I'm just putting bands of colour on first, and then I'll blend some of them.
I'm just looking at the piece called Dappled Lilies, and you can see why there's painstaking amounts of time that go into these pieces of yours, because they're quite amazing. But the colour contrast and how you actually put your composition together is really quite amazing as well.
What I go for is the light, and particularly the shadow amongst foliage. You get so many variations in the shadow, so many shapes, and to me shadow is what gives the sunlight life almost. It brings the whole painting to life.
Now this next piece actually is a watercolour that I think you did a while back called Michaela and Poppies, but an absolutely beautiful piece, it really is.
Yeah, that was when Michaela, one of my daughters, was about 3 years old. With the poppies, I've enlarged them so that it gives you a sense of the poppies being right in front of your face, and that in fact lends intimacy to the whole scene. You can really feel you're in amongst the poppies there.
1987, you were actually the official artist for the defence of when Australia 2, I think it was actually racing against you guys for the America's Cup, and New Zealand won the Cup off Australia, and you basically painted the yacht called Kiwi Magic.
Yeah, I was asked to do 2 paintings of KZ7 was the yacht. We did a limited edition run of 500 prints each, which sold very, very well. And that was a good break for me.
Yeah, and gone on in leaps and bounds since then. No two ways about it.
Yeah, thank you, Grant.
Yeah. You've got to a stage with this one where we're probably going to be able to move on to the next piece that you've got, and do a couple of techniques in that one as well.
Okay. Now I want to do a nice clear sky that's graduated from one colour to another colour, and from a slightly lighter tone to a slightly darker tone. So I've mixed up the 2 colours and 2 tones, and I'm going to do what's called a sawtooth join, which is probably the best way I know of getting a very slow graduation through and a very even graduation. So the first thing I need to do is I'll get the darker tone, which is a blue, again a cobalt blue, which we've been using right the way through, and I'm just going to quickly draw in the teeth.
It's like a saw.
Yep.
So what other artists actually use this particular technique?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure,
Okay.
but I must have picked it up from somewhere, and it works extremely well. The longer the teeth, the slower the graduation.
Yeah.
The shorter the teeth, obviously it becomes more sudden. All right, now I'll fill in the blue basically.
Yes.
So it's a solid, they're all solid masses. The only difficulty that you can have with this is when I'm getting close to the hair here. I need to do some horizontal brushwork, which sometimes can go over the hair, but I mean, being oil, we can easily fix that up at a later date.
You know, apart from all the florals you do, your figurative work's pretty amazing as well, and there's one here called Silk and Surf, which is sort of where we're heading. It's a similar type of picture, but you can see the sunlight. This is one of your beautiful daughters.
Michaela's my eldest daughter, and that's an antique dress, I think, and it has silk and satin in it. Now, I find with skies, quite often if I'm outside or driving in the car and I look at the sky, I quite often see at the bottom of the sky, it goes slightly yellow. I find it really lifts the sky if you can have a lighter tone and a warmer tone coming into the blue. Now what I do is I'm going to use a filbert brush. It's a soft brush, but it's firm as well, so it will push the paint. And I'm going to push it with a horizontal motion. It has to be continuous and methodical. So I'm just pushing it, going upwards horizontally in a very even way.
It's a great technique.
Okay, now you can do the same thing down as well.
So these are just some of the techniques you teach at your workshops?
Yeah, these are just a few. There are many, and many ways of kind of approaching a painting and how to look at a scene and decide how you're going to go about actually doing the painting.
Yeah.
As you can see, there are still a few little streaks there. Now I've found over time the best way to blend and get rid of those streaks is just with your finger. So just make sure the end of your finger is clean, and then very lightly, and probably not horizontally now, I'll do it kind of in a diagonal motion, just very lightly skim the surface of the paint like that.
And also one of the galleries that you deal with in New Zealand, in Auckland, is the International Arts Centre that has some very prestigious artists in there, you being one of them, of course.
I started with the International Arts Centre in, I think, the mid to late 80s, and I've been selling my work there pretty much ever since, for probably over 30 years now.
Well, we've had an absolutely fantastic day with you, Paul. Your work is amazing, incredibly talented man. I think that the rest of the world will be amazed when they see you as well.
Thank you, Graham. It's been an absolute pleasure having you and Sophia here.
All right, fantastic day with an amazing man, very, very talented. Went through some processes today, which was great. To end up with amazing results like this, it's just wonderful. Paul, thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.
It was a great day, it really was. Your website address again is?
paulconey.co.nz.
So if you want to come in and have a look at what Paul's doing, and also inquire about his workshops. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you want to travel to the beautiful islands of New Zealand, it's a fantastic area, beautiful scenery. Paul and his darling wife have got their home set up specifically for that. So come in and make an inquiry about coming in to see Paul. Come and see us on Facebook, YouTube, and if you want some other information, come into colourandyourlife.com.au and we'll see you in there as well. But thanks again, and all the way from New Zealand. Remember, make sure you put some colour in your life. Till we see you next time, guys. Bye now. Bye.